Hello, good morning, and welcome back to The Last Pigment. My name is Andalee, and if you have never run across this channel before, I do a lot of watercolor DIY and gouache videos. In today's video, we are going to be painting a pumpkin. This is what you should have at the end of this tutorial if you follow it step by step. I'm also going to link to an article that breaks it down even more granular, meaning the colors I use, the supplies, the paper, everything that I use in this video will be linked down below. All right, so I'm gonna start by drawing the shape of the pumpkin. I'm just using a brown color because usually the lines of the pumpkin are a little darker. I'm not too worried because we're going to go back in with some lighter colors later. It doesn't have to be exact. And then I'm not going to forget the stem. Of course, we can go back and always add lighter colors. This is just so that we know the form of the pumpkin. Now I'm going to go in with a light color, and I'm going to add, using this flesh color. I don't know what it is in the jelly gouache sets, so what I'm going to do is I'll add the titles back in and let you know what color this is in the video. But I'm just going to go in and mark some of the lighter areas of the pumpkin. And that's usually where the light source is coming from. So if your light's coming from this direction, you want to add that in. And of course I'm using a reference image that I took. So you're gonna wanna go in and just add in some of these lighter areas. Just doing that where it looks like the light's hitting it. And of course there are other areas that it's hitting it, but we can always go back and add that later because gouache is special like that. You can just go back in and make things lighter again. So now I'm going to add in my middle value, which is going to be an orange color. This is going to be too bright and too rich of a color to make this pumpkin look realistic. But I'm using this color because you'll notice on some pumpkins, there are areas where it is really bright. So the orange actually looks really, really saturated. So I'm just adding this in because we do want some areas of the pumpkin to look really saturated. You notice I'm not being too delicate, I'm not blending yet. I notice that there's some shadow on this side, kind of here. Even though I'm not going to do the pumpkin next to it, I'm going to stick with my reference photo and just do what I'm seeing in my photo. I'm not being too precious with it. I'm not too worried. I notice there's kind of a little bit of light going this way around the cylinder. Not cylinder, sorry, circle. So now I'm going to mix a value that is somewhere in between the light and the middle value. And I'm using that really light color with a yellow ochre. And I'm just really experimenting with the colors that I see and that what I have to work with. And that's a really nice middle value. It's a really light color. I do have a little bit too much water, But right now I'm just filling in some of those colors. That was a nice color. And I'm gonna start mixing with some of these other colors like this brown and create kind of an orange, a brownish orange. That's a good color. I'm gonna use some of these to create more depth and value on the pumpkin. I'm also gonna create a more red orange, because you'll notice there are areas of the pumpkin that are very warm. Namely, kind of in here, you'll notice there's some areas that are kind of reddish. And we're gonna add the shadow back in on the bottom, so just hang tight. Just to add some of the warmer values in. Gouache is kind of a push and pull medium. You work both forward and backwards. So it's not like watercolors. You don't go from light to dark the whole time. You definitely work both ways. So sometimes we're working towards light. And you'll see what I mean when we start to go back in and add some of those light values back in here to make it look more realistic. And now I'm just using a wet brush to go in and blend a little bit. Darker colors as I feel like they should have been. Just following my instinct about the shape of the pumpkin and observing the form. Really just observing the form of the pumpkin. Blending out some of these rough areas. I just made my brown a touch warmer, and while it's still wet, I'm gonna go in and just blend a little bit of the brown, blending out this hard line a little bit. Adding in some of the shadow areas and creating more of the form of the pumpkin. I'm gonna blend out some of these hard lines just so they look a little more natural. And you know, if you make a mistake, you can always wet your brush and just go back in with some water and blend it out. And this doesn't look too great right now, but we can go back in and fix that. So with gouache, everything is fixable. Everything can be changed or adjusted. we just let it dry and then go back in and do more blending. So now that I'm waiting for the bottom part to dry, I'm gonna go in and do the stem. And you notice that the stem is really kind of a mauve, sort of gray color. So I'm using the brown with white, and I'm just gonna create some tonal value, going in and adding a light color. And then I'm gonna go in with more of a dark color and blend. We're just blending color into wet paint right now. So you're doing sort of a wet and wet technique, but it's a little different with gouache. It actually feels more like oil paints. And now we're gonna let that dry. Okay, so we're getting close to it being dried. It's still drying. Don't be surprised with gouache if it takes a little bit longer than watercolors for everything to really dry on the paper. Okay, so now we have too many middle values. So I need to go back in and add in some more lights and more darks, blend out some areas on the pumpkin to make it look a little bit more realistic. And it's okay to do this because with gouache, you can just continue to layer until you get to a point where you feel like you're representing all of the values of your subject. And for me, because the light source is coming from over here, I feel like this area got a little bit too dark. I'm going in and I'm just gonna blend some nice light colors. Blend out the line a little bit too. And you notice the other colors will come through still, so you're still gonna see some of the values that were already there. That's good. That's kind of some of the magic of using gouache paints. I'm blending with a little bit darker color, but it's hard to kind of see the value of that. You see the top part is starting to smooth out a little bit. I'm gonna mix a lighter dark value and go in and kind of add some color to this kind of uneven crack. Well, they're veins in the pumpkin, but I call them kind of cracks. You'll notice that the pumpkin's starting to flatten out a little bit, and I don't want it to do that. I want to preserve some of the form. So I'm going back in and adding a little bit of dark areas in the top where I'm noticing that it rolls, like there's a smooth roll. Now I'm gonna go in and add some lighter areas in here with the white, but it's not a true white. It's actually like a mix of the brown. And just to achieve some color harmony, I am going to use the same color from the stem on the pumpkin, which is something that probably not a lot of artists would do. But I feel like it just adds a touch of harmony to the piece overall. I'm also going to blend out this line over here because this is just way too dark and the light should be hitting the subject. Some artists would just not paint this line in, but I felt like, just for me personally, I like to draw the shape and preserve the form of the object and go back in and just remove that later. And now, just to add some emphasis, I'm going to pull in a black color because this top stem up here actually does have some black. So I'm going to blend a little bit in here. Now, to make the pumpkin look like it's really popping off the page, I'm going to add a background in here. And I know you're not looking at the reference image right now, but if you were, you would see that there's kind of like a purplish background behind the pumpkin. The walkway's kind of got a pink sort of color. So what I'm gonna do is actually paint in something around the shape so that we can make the pumpkin look a little more realistic, because objects are always in relation to each other in a painting. It can be very difficult to make something look really realistic when it's just on a white flat background. So we're just going to add something in here, make it look a little more interesting. And because this is just a study, I'm not being real precious with it. So you can kind of experiment and try any color that you want. Doesn't have to be purple. We don't want the pumpkin to be floating either, so you'll see after I mark this in, I'm gonna go back in and add more color into the foreground. You'll notice that the stem already looks more realistic because there's a color behind it. So now I can go in and actually use more of a true white, and it's gonna look a lot prettier. It's gonna pop off the page more. Going in with a really thick layer of paint though, keep that in mind. Whenever you're layering with gouache, you wanna keep it really thick towards the end of the painting. And now I'm gonna go in and just add a few really light areas. Because when it dries, it's not gonna look the same as right now. Now I'm gonna go in and add some darker values below the pumpkin. Because it looks too round down here. I need to make the pumpkin look more like an organic shape. Because pumpkins are never even objects. They always have bumps and lumps, so it shouldn't look too perfect either. Now I'm gonna let it dry and I'm gonna see how it looks. I'm probably gonna do a little bit more blending and mix some lighter tonal values and add them kind of in. Maybe blend out this area. I really hope that you liked that video. If you did, please like the video and follow my channel. And I'll see you in the next tutorial.